Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's call. For those of you that have been on previous calls, thank you for coming around for this one, and any new joiners. This is Minister Lisa MacLeod, the Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries, 10th of these town halls. She has been there in your corner. She has your back and has taken the advice she receives from these calls and across the province directly to the cabinet table. I also admire the fact that Minister Lisa MacLeod has been absolutely transparent with you, giving you the straight goods, whether in good times or tougher times like we are facing here today. My name is Tim Hudak. I'm the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association, representing Ontario's 80,000 realtors, and proud to say a former minister who worked with many of you as a Minister of Tourism, Culture and Recreation, and honored that Mr. MacLeod has asked me to help to host these town halls. She will have a special guest to introduce today. It's the Minister's privilege to introduce that special guest. We're also going to have on our call today to answer any questions you have, Steve Harlow and Kevin Finnerty, both Assistant Deputy Ministers with the Ministry. You've also sent in a lot of questions in advance, which we'll get through as much as possible. Province under Premier Forward Minister MacLeod had to make some difficult decisions that were announced this past week, impacting on many of you directly. And I know many others will be concerned if COVID numbers go up in their part of the province. It may impact you as well. These decisions were tough, but necessary. And Minister MacLeod will discuss what that means for you and how she continues to go to bat for the women and men and businesses in your sector. We have incredible beauty, talent, entrepreneurship, determination, and heritage in Ontario. And we look forward to a chance to celebrate that going forward. Minister MacLeod, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Tim, and thank you for your continued contribution to this ministry during this unprecedented time. And thanks to all of you for joining us. As Tim noted, this is our 10th telephone town hall since the pandemic began, and this crisis continues to offer a roller coaster of surprises and emotion for all of us that are involved. I know the announcement last week for Ottawa, Toronto, and Peel regions hit our sectors again very hard and almost exclusively. All but one of the restrictions put in place last Friday impacted the sectors the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries is responsible for. We recognize how difficult this has been. This decision taken by the government was based on advice from the Chief Medical Officer of Health of Ontario and his counterparts in the affected region. As the second wave of COVID-19 sweeps across the globe, your Ontario government is committed to the safety and well-being of all residents, and we will take all preventative precautions necessary to save lives. This meant in Ottawa, Toronto, and Peel, we are reverting back to stage 2 for a 28-day period to slow the spread of COVID-19 and relieve pressure in our hospitals and their ICUs. Today's format, as Tim noted, will be a bit different than what we've done in the past. We have a very special guest joining us who will provide remarks on the decision and the steps the government is taking to address the fiscal fallout, and then we'll be taking a few questions off the top. And then I'll have my ADMs, Kevin Finnerty and Steve Harlow, also join us in the event that you have technical questions that are best addressed by them. At the end, I'll have a few moments to share with you what the ministry is doing to deal with this second wave and the set of new restrictions that have been adopted, and walk through some of the polling data from our recent Ipsos market research. Just from a high level, Ontarians have adopted a very bottom-up approach, meaning our hyper-local support for their own communities and their local businesses and culture institutions is what's on forefront and on top of their mind. Both our research and our $14.2 million marketing campaign are in line with the hyper-local support for our sectors, and I'm looking at ways right now to grow that support to those in the vulnerable sectors, particularly in the hot spots as fall turns to winter. More on that later, however, because Premier Ford is joining us on the line today. The decision to bring Ottawa, Toronto, and Peel into stage 2 was one that I know he would have preferred to have avoided, but he took those decisions as did our cabinet based on the medical advice that was provided to our government. Our Premier is aware that nearly 1,000 people are on this call today, and those who are at the heart of our communities and our local our economies are affected. Everyone from the owner of your local pub to the producer of your favorite TV show to our favorite sports teams and favorite cultural institutions are on the call. The Premier is well aware of all that you do to remind us of why we love to be Ontarians. I'd like to now turn it over to Premier Ford to discuss Friday's announcement and how our government is supporting businesses in the sector.
Well, thanks so much, and Tim as well for hosting us today and having me on. As Lisa said, actually, before So I mentioned this. I know I may be repeating myself. We had a call with about people that I believe are on this line. I think there's over 1,000 now. And as I mentioned last week, there is no minister that works harder, is more passionate about her ministry than Lisa. And as I said on the call on Friday with the group, I wish, Lisa, I could record you these cabinet meetings, fighting for each and every person that's on this line. And I can tell you, when Lisa has her mind made up on something, she's incredible. She just does not stop, which is great for each and every one of you. It's great for the province. It's great for all of us. So Lisa, thank you. Keep up the great job. You're doing fantastic. And along with Tim, you and your team are doing an incredible job keeping us informed around the province on what's going on, especially on the real estate side of things, along with so many other areas that you help us out on. As Lisa was saying, folks, it was a very, very tough decision. Probably, I'd say the toughest decision I had to make since I've been pre. I take it very serious that they ask us to close down businesses. To me, that's to close down people's livelihood. Even if it's temporary for 28 days, I'll tell you, it weighs on you. And you talk about losing sleep. And believe me, I lose sleep over stuff like this. And the way I contacted our finance minister that night, I ended up getting briefed and asked them to put a $300 million package together to help our small businesses, especially on the fixed costs that they have no control over. And when I say fixed cost, everything from the property tax relief to hydro to natural gas bills, any fixed other costs. We've also been in cooperation with the federal government. I was on the phone that night with Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister, and I have to thank them as well. They acted immediately. I thought it might take a couple of days to get through, but the next day they came out with a package that will support each and every one of you when it comes to the employees, no matter if it's paying 65% of their wages or upwards to 90% for the rent cost. But we're going to do it a little differently this time. We're going to give the money to the tenants opposed to the landlord. Out of a $60,000 package that you can get, and that's what I call a true partner. And the federal government, as I mentioned about the commercial rent relief program, that's costing $900 million. But what is more important is that we support our small businesses, help them get through it, promote takeout service, making sure that they can still continue, and this is going to be permanent, is selling wine and beer and spirits, and it helps the restaurants a little bit, and other small businesses areas that we can support by reducing the tax burden by 8.75%. We did this year WSIB premiums, and I always say when you knock off a WSIB premium and give back close to $2 billion, that's like a tax cut, reducing the regulations by $400 million. These are some of the areas that we're supporting small businesses, and we're going to continue to support them. And I always say very, very few elected, not too many at least, and say I've walked a mile in your shoes. And I can tell each and every one of you, I have walked a mile in your shoes. I've had to meet the payrolls at our company here and down in the U.S. I've had to come up with marketing plans to pick up the sales and really promote that. And looking as simple as a P&L statement, I think it should be mandatory. Every single politician in the country, no matter what political stripe they come from, they should be understanding what a P&L statement looks like. And because that's what each and every one of you have to do every single month. I know at our company, a lot of people go quarter by quarter. I literally went day by day, month by month. You're looking at the sales and seeing where we're at and the profits and the purchasing and so on and so forth. I share the pain. I can tell you that's why it hit me so hard when they said, Doug, we have no choice. We have to do it this way. And I'll never disagree with our chief medical officer of health and our health team, because it's never just one person that makes this decision. As Dr. Brown told me last week, there's 70 people 70 other professional doctors just under him alone. And a lot of them, he said, vast majority are donating their time, giving him advice, no matter if it's epidemiologists, if there's other experts within the healthcare system, all pitching in. So it's not taken lightly, and I truly believe, and I've said this to our cabinet, Dr. Williams and his team are very pragmatic. They understand the pressures that it creates on people, be it mental health, stress, when you're you're in trouble with your business, and that we have to take that into consideration and weigh that out as well. But I'm really asking everyone in Ontario, please just follow the guidelines and protocols. We do not want to go to a complete lockdown after they showed me the numbers. Acute care beds have increased by 250%. The numbers literally doubled in about 4 or 5 days, from 500 up to close to 1,000 cases. And the ICU beds too. There's only certain capacity there. So we had absolutely no choice but to go with recommendations from the chief medical officer and their team. But my friends, if we continue to just tighten up a bit, and I'm sure everyone remembered when we were under 100 cases, and everyone kind of let a bit, and then it back bite us in the backside. But what I can promise you, after I sat over the weekend and returned God knows how many calls, I sat and said to myself, we all of us have so much to be grateful for and thankful for. I'm thankful. We have great people like yourself, great entrepreneurs that are job creators, and everyone else, the 14.5 million people that have pitched in and switched over the lines and PPE, and everyone's sticking together. And I'm just asking each and every one of you for your patience. We will get through this. We're going to get through this. We're going to work together, and I'll always be there to support you any way I can. And when we come back, I can tell you one thing. We did it once before. When we took office, we were behind 300,000 jobs. Last December, we were looking at 250,000 people, because all of us created 107,000 new jobs. And we're light this economy on fire, the likes of which this province has never seen. We'll compete against anywhere in the world. We'll compete against our neighbors to the south, and we'll create the environment for companies like yourselves to thrive and grow and prosper along with your employees. My friends, I just want to thank you. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I know everyone's working their back off. So thank you, and God bless you and your family.
Thank you very much, Premier. Would you be able to stick on for a question or two from the audience?
Yeah, if I could take a couple of quick questions be on the clock. Take a couple, then I can pop on and do another call. Thank you.
Okay.
You bet. Well, folks, thank you very much, Premier. Thank you, Minister MacLeod. If people have questions to ask, please hit 3 on your phone. We did get a significant number submitted ahead. The announcement was made last week. We will get through as many of those as we can. Please hit 3 on your phone. And Minister, if okay with you, I will play the moderator's prerogative here. If I could ask the Premier a question directly.
Sure.
Yeah, Premier, listen, thank you for the sincerity of your remarks. We can hear it in your voice. I know you are somebody who has had to meet payroll. You know what that's about. You've got a soft spot in your heart for small business. And I think for those listening in Toronto, Peel, and Ottawa that have been impacted, they understand the importance of keeping people safe. What is the government looking at doing for those folks in the next 28-day period?
I'm sorry, Tim, was that a question?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, for you, Premier. Just in terms of the programs that you're looking at, for those that are impacted in this 28-day period, is there some special assistance available for them?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm just going to repeat. I know I said a few of them when I was on the call here, but just the rent subsidy. Now we're going to switch it over. Before it was 5% to the tenant, 25% to the landlord, and the provincial and federal government would pick up 50%. Now the feds are going to pick up 90% of it, and it's going to go to the tenants opposed to the landlords. Because as much as some landlords cooperated, there was a lot that didn't cooperate. So they're going to be getting that. The other thing that can help quite a bit, I think, at least to get us over the hump there, I would really apply for the interest-free loan. Before it was you'd apply for $40,000 and the $10,000 was a grant out of that $40,000. You'd have to pay back $30,000 by, I believe it's June 2022. Now they've changed it that they'll have a $60,000 program, and $30,000 of that will be a grant, and the other $30,000 you'd have to pay back again in 2022. What we're doing as a province, we're going to take care of your electricity costs, your gas costs, to make sure you don't have that burden. We're going to take care of your property taxes for the period that you've been closed. Any fixed costs, that's what we're really focused on, and supporting folks with once they do get back up and running, some PPE as well. So we're just looking at any overhead costs that people are facing, and we're there to support them. And I've asked the finance minister, along with the deputy prime minister, please continue looking here and support these people, because nothing replaces having people able to open their business. I understand we can still rest, weather permitting, because it's getting a little cool out there, but to have it outdoors over 10 meters in there and take out services as well. But Tim, I'll tell you, it bothered me a tremendous night out, because I understand the pain people are going through, and I just want to make sure I'm there. And I promise you one thing: I will not spare an expense to support our small businesses, because I have all the confidence in the world we're going to come back stronger than ever before and make that up when the economy gets going.
Terrific, Premier, and I know you have to run to your next appointment. If you had time for one last one, I think folks that are outside of those areas of Ottawa, Peel, and Toronto, wonder how you go about making these decisions. Will there be a trigger for them? How does you and how does Cabinet make these types of calls?
Well, let's start with the Cabinet caucus, and Lisa, as sure as I'm telling you, you've been in those calls. I think one Cabinet call went for 4 hours. One period of caucus call went for 4 hours, and people think we just roll over and take the advice without drilling down with questions. We drill down, I can assure you. Really, really drill down on our medical team, and in our whole team we have one doctor, and Mary Lee Fullerton, and we have another health professional, Minister Elliott. She's been doing this for a few years now and understands the system. But we've asked every single question possible. And then where's the bar set for the rest of the province right now? The question I'm getting a lot of areas of the York region, and they measure everything on 2-week basis. So any of the policies or guidelines we put in a week ago, we should be seeing the results over the next couple of weeks. And the same with the policies that we put in place last week. We'll have a better gauge in 2 weeks. They never gave me an exact answer, and to be fair to the medical team, they can't give me an exact answer. They can't say you weren't going to go back if we don't hit 200 cases per se. It's the overall percent. And a lot of people are telling me, well, we're testing like crazy. We're testing, and the testing team are doing a great job. We're pumping up the tests. We got backlogs pretty well caught up. When they need 25,000 backlogs, that's kind of standard moving forward. So they're doing a great job. But they're saying, well, you're testing more, you're going to get more results. Fair comment. But what we measure is the percentage, and the percentage of how many people are positive versus the test. And we were below 1% at a point of the test. We've jumped up in those 3 areas close to 3% in certain sectors within those areas, regions within Toronto. And these are staggering numbers. we're seeing 1 in 10, so it's jumped up to 10%. 1 in 10 people are testing positive. For those areas, we send in mobile units, we send in teams, we also increase advertising within these communities. So just kind of to answer your question, I know I'm going on, Tim, but I don't have an exact number that I can give to people that are outside of those 3 jurisdictions right now. What I can say, we keep promoting social distancing, washing of hands, and just making sure that your circle, your contact with people are limited. Because before we used to, people test for COVID, Tim and Lisa, and they'd come up with 10 contacts. Now, when people are testing positive, they're coming up with 50 to 100 contacts. And so our contact tracers, just imagine contacting 100 people for one person, and those 100 people have another 100. And so it just compounds itself into not even thousands, tens of thousands of people. And that's how quickly this can spread. Oh, that's where we're at right now. We're going to stay on it, and I can assure you, you'll be the first to know. I always say, when I find out, if I find out that night, I come out the next morning and tell you exactly what the doctors have told me. So we're going to stay on it, and folks, please have patience. We will come back all together, and we will be booming once again in this process.
Well, thank you very much, Premier. I do appreciate the generosity of your time. We had over 100 people on a call Friday, and you walked right from your press conference directly to that Zoom meeting with my ministerial advisory committees, and over 120 of them were there. You took your time, and again today with close to 1,000 on this call to support my sectors, and I know they do appreciate it. And Premier, you're 100% right. The decisions we made, I think we met 1 week in cabinet for 29 hours, and these decisions, not one decision we've ever taken has been an easy one, but it's always been a necessary one. And so I'm very proud of your leadership and very proud to serve in your cabinet. So thank you very much on behalf of everybody for joining us.
Well, thank you, Lisa. You're a champion, Tim. So are you, and everyone on the line are a bunch of champions. And that's why I have all the confidence in the world. We're going to get through this, and we're going to come back stronger than ever before. So thank you, and God.
Outstanding. Thank you, Premier. Thank you, Minister MacLeod. That was outstanding, Minister, that you got the Premier on the show to speak to folks in this call directly, and you could hear in his voice the weight of these decisions and how his heart is with the small business leaders on this call. Folks, you have joined the Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries, Minister Lisa MacLeod's telephone town hall. This is the 10th that she's done since COVID sadly struck our province. We're heading towards almost 10,000 people who have joined these calls since they began back in the spring. For those that are new, or as a refresher, please hit 3 on your phone. We do have a number of pre-submitted questions that have a lot of detail here we will get to, but if you want to ask a live question, we'll try to get to those as well. Please hit 3 on your phone. The minister is also joined by her assistant deputy ministers, Steve Harlow and Kevin Finnerty, who can answer any technical questions you may have. So, Minister, there's some really good ones I'd like to run through here quickly, if good by you, from the pre-submitted questions. The first is Amanda Perricone. She's a coordinator of the Toronto Region Conservation Authority. And Amanda says, how are drive-through events considered within these new restrictions? Do the outdoor event numbers apply to drive-through?
I'll have my ADM, Kevin Finnerty, expand on this, but no, they shouldn't be impacted because they were part of stage 2 and phase 2, and we fought really hard within the ministry in order to do that. We recognize the importance that it has for mental health. It also has, I think, provided a nice boost to a very hard-hit part of the economy. In addition, just last week, we invested $9 million, and I'll talk about it a little bit more, for different types of festival events that would look more like a drive-in or a drive-through, as well as more digitally. So if, Kevin, you don't mind just walking through some of the technical aspects, that would be great. But by and large, Amanda, this is an area where I think we're going to start to get used to now, just given the fact that the 3 hot spots and our 4 largest cities are now reverting back to stage 2. So, Kevin, do you want to take it away and talk a little bit more about the technical aspect?
Yes, Minister, I will. So it's Kevin Finnerty. So as the Minister said, drive-through and drive-in events are not subject to the gathering limits and are allowed to continue under the following conditions. So every person who's attending a drive-in or a drive-through event must remain within their motor vehicle, except when they're purchasing admission, using a washroom, or for the purposes of health and safety. The driver, like each vehicle, has to be at least 2 meters away from every other vehicle. Every person who works at that event has to be at least 2 meters away from motor vehicles, except if they're, facilitating a purpose of admission or food or beverages. And food and beverages can only be sold to persons in attendance at a drive-in or drive-through event if they are delivered directly to the person's vehicle. And there's really strong limits on exchanging of materials between people in attendance at these events and people who work at these events. So, but basically the standard rules that were in place for stage 2 continue to apply. So these events can continue to proceed.
Terrific. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, ADM Affinity, on that answer. Minister, we got a number of questions from the film and television and the creative industries here. So I'm going to group 2 of them, if it's okay with you. The first is from Lisa Broadfoot. She's with Boat Rocker Media. It's a great name, Boat Rocker Media. Lisa asks, will there be any restrictions on filming in Ontario? And Cameron McLaren, who's a director of Guru Studio in Toronto, asks, how will the mandatory closure affect animation studios? So filming and animation.
Film and TV production, visual effects, and animation studios were allowed to open in stage 1, so they remain unaffected by the restrictions announced last week. I can tell you I was very adamant early on during the pandemic to make sure film and television production were captured in the early stages of reopening for a couple of reasons. One is every conversation I've had with film and TV production, they were looking at a gold standard in terms of reentry. This is an international, most of the productions we're working with, even the Canadian ones, have international standards. And we started to see what was happening in New York and Los Angeles and elsewhere around the world. So we felt in order to remain competitive that we would adopt those early processes and protocols. So all of that continues to be permitted. So production activities, supporting activities such as hair, makeup, and wardrobe, provided that they're conducted in accordance with applicable requirements. And I can say just on our film and television advisory panel met. It still continues to meet and has had many regular conversations with us as well as the Ministry of Finance, and a number of our members from the union or the skilled trade side have also been working with the Ministry of Labour in order to do that. And just before I got on the call today, the discussions are starting to happen. We did a really effective job with the hub city model with the NHL, and how do we adopt sort of protocols that way as well here over the longer term. So I'll turn it over to Kevin to see if he has any other points that he wants to make. But just fresh off of the victories of Schitt's Creek and then looking at what we can do, we're actually investing more in film and television production now to export around the world. And so we want to make sure that they are continuing to do their work and that we are in an environment where it's safe to do so. So Kevin, I don't know if you have anything else to add there.
No, Minister, as you said, in stage 1, film and TV post-production, visual effects, and animation studios were allowed to open, unaffected by the announcement last week. The rest of film and television production was allowed to open in stage 2, once again unaffected by the announcement last week. One thing I would add, though, is that some pretty stringent requirements in place. The Section 21 Film and Television Health and Safety Advisory Committee under the Ministry of Labour has published guidelines for productions to help identify and mitigate any potential workplace risks related to the COVID-19. So Ontario is a leader in this regard when it comes to health and safety on film and television sets.
We have over 1,000 listeners today for Minister Lisa MacLeod's telephone town hall for operators in the heritage, sport, tourism, and culture industries. Your questions are welcome. The Minister takes as many questions as time allows. Please hit 3 on your phone. Minister, a ton of questions also have been pre-submitted on sport, and there's a lot of details about what these mean. Let me start with one from Edward Nikoloff. Edward is the Recreation Supervisor with the City of Brampton. Edward asks, do the gathering limits apply to private sport rental groups who are in training?
Yeah, so the limits apply to public and private settings. So for the regions that are in modified stage 2, so that's Toronto, Peel, and Ottawa, the total numbers of members of the public permitted to be in a class or organized program or organized activity at the facility can't exceed 10 people. And each class, organized program or organized activity must take place in a separate room. So I know that there's some more technical aspects to this. The reason I'm bringing in my ADMs more today than normally is because I want to make sure that the information we get out is correct to the letter. So I'm going to ask my ADM, Steve Harlow, just to expand on the gathering limits to private sport rentals who are training. And again, there are now 2 different sets of rules, right? The Ottawa, Peel, Toronto, and then the rest of the province, which has not reverted back to stage 2. So I'll let you take that, Steve.
Thank you, Minister. I would encourage the individual to look to Section 13 of the reg, but I'll go over a couple of the points. So for the stage 2, the hot spots, as they call them, for indoor facilities, including gyms, community centers, arenas, multiplexes, fitness facilities. Just like the minister said, there is a limit of 10 per class, but there are also some other restrictions. Indoor exercise or dance classes cannot be provided. You cannot have access to the weights or exercise machines. No spectators are permitted. Any person who enters the facility must maintain a distance of at least 2 meters from any other person. Team sports must not be practiced or played within the facility. They can only train. And it cannot include games or scrimmages. Locker rooms, change rooms, showers must be closed, except to the extent they provide access to storage or washroom or first aid. Any equipment must be cleaned and disinfected between each use. If they cannot be cleaned, they should not be used in the facility. That would be from the follow-up, Minister.
Thanks very much, Steve.
And again, Steve, if you don't mind, what section is that? There's a lot of detail. Really appreciate it. I think by those listening at home, we got a ton of questions around that type of measurement. So, Steve, again, where would they find this information for follow-up?
That is identified in Section 13 of the updated orders.
Terrific. And again, that's Assistant Deputy Minister Steve Harlow, also Assistant Deputy Minister Kevin Finnerty, joining the Minister for the very technical nature of what these restrictions mean for Toronto, Peel, and Ottawa. Folks, if you'd like to ask the Minister a direct question, please hit 3 on your phone and we will queue you up as well. Minister, we're going to take our first call, a live person here. And I would ask, when you do call in, just let us know your name, what part of the province you're from, and who you represent. Sarah, Kids Sport Ontario, please join us.
Hi, good afternoon. My question is regarding sort of the messaging for community sport. Now, I know there's been a fair bit of messaging and we just touched on some of the safety measures. I think what some of the challenges we're hearing is the messaging going to community sport programs, even just outside of those regions of Toronto, Peel, and Ottawa, the neighboring communities specifically. What's that messaging going to look like for them right now? Should they be looking at tightening up restrictions, or should they continue going the way that they are?
And sir, where are you from?
So I represent Kids Sport Ontario, so I'm based essentially across the province.
Okay, terrific.
Yeah, so we're predominantly today focused on those 4 hotspot areas, Mississauga, Brampton, Ottawa, and Toronto, where there is a great deal of change that has happened overnight. And so, again, we just talked about the gathering limits and the capacity sizes, of course. But in terms of restrictions at the moment, we have been encouraged by the Chief Medical Officer of Health and the decision that the government took on Friday to limit all but essential travel around the province. However, there are no geographical restrictions per se for leagues and amateur sport teams. But it is recommended that leagues only play within the same geographical region. We've taken great care to make sure that there are limits as a result of stage 2 as well as stage 3 for the interaction, the spread of COVID-19. And I know we continue to ban contact sport in the province even outside the four large cities. I don't know. I know. Well, I don't know if Steve has anything to add, but I will ask him to add, only to say, finally, we're going to continue to work with our provincial sport organizations to get that message out. We do appreciate how fast this virus is spreading, and therefore we have to be nimble and make decisions as quickly as possible with the information that we have. So, Steve, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else, but that would be great.
Thank you, Minister. I might suggest it's always good to connect with the Ontario Recreation Facilities Association, because they're putting out some really up-to-date guidelines on how facilities should be used for both sport and community recreation activities. And also another organization is called Parks and Recreation Ontario, and they're providing a lot of advice and guidance to how community recreation activities should proceed. So I would suggest those are two really good contacts. And for the purposes of the order, sport is sport, and we don't differentiate. Pro sport we do, but amateur sport, recreation, and sports activities. So hopefully that's of help, and hopefully those additional contacts will be useful.
Thank you very much for those detailed answers. We have about 20 minutes left in this call. Again, if you want to ask a question, please hit 3 on your phone. We do have a number of pre-submitted questions, again, really around the detail of what this will mean in the various parts of the province impacted. So, Minister, here's one from the culture sector. It's Mervyn Mehta, the Executive Director of the Royal Conservatory of Music. And Mervyn asks, while performing arts centres will be closed to public, can digital concerts still be captured in theaters with only the artists and the crew involved?
Yeah, Mervyn, this is one that's troubling to me, because the rules for performing arts venues in Stage 2 regions mean that concerts, artistic events, theatrical performance, and other performances for more than 10 people can operate only if the event takes place in a drive-in or drive-through format. So otherwise, theaters and concert venues and cinemas are closed, meaning that rehearsals are still not allowed in performing art venues in Stage 2. You're not the first to bring this up. Matthew Loden was very quick from the TSO to raise this issue with us. And then the National Arts Centre raised it with us on Friday night. We were late into the evening seeking legal clarification. That legal clarification has come back. And that ruling has come back that is not allowed. That said, I know, and I'll have Kevin pop on again. Throughout the first time we went through this, we did look at some restrictions and amending them. And I know going to a digital format has been very important for the performing arts, who are literally taking the roughest of this situation. So at the moment, I don't have an answer that you'll be happy with, but I'll continue to work with Kevin and others to see what might be done. So Kevin, I don't know if you would like to add any more, but I'd appreciate it just to have you build in your 2 cents and what the legal interpretation was from the ministry side over the weekend.
Yes, Minister. So as the Minister said, performing arts venues were not allowed to open until Stage 3, and that included rehearsals. So based on that, going back to Stage 2 meant that those venues were closed, not just for public performances and in-person performances, as well as rehearsals, but also for the kind of recording activity and live streaming activity that was being contemplated by some venues. So that's not allowed at this time. But as the Minister said, the models that you've outlined in terms of live streaming and recording are new. So we will certainly take a look at how they could potentially be accommodated down the road if changes are being made. But at the current time, they're simply not allowed. And obviously, the decision was not made lightly. But at the end of the day, this was made, quite frankly, to stop gatherings where people come together and where you could potentially have spread of COVID. So that was what was driving this decision. But certainly, the live streaming is something that we'll look at as a possibility for opening up, but at this time, not allowed. So thank you, Minister.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Minister. So I think I just want to ask this anyway, because I think the answer to this was clear from that answer, but Jocelyn Johnston, who's a manager of theaters in the city of Brampton, did ask it, so I want to make sure Jocelyn gets her answer. She says the closure of performing arts centers and venues, does this include broadcast performances without an audience or closed rehearsals, or is there any circumstance where they could continue in Brampton?
Yeah, so thank you, Jocelyn. No, so the rules, just to reiterate our response to Mervyn, the rules for performing arts venues in stage 2 regions, of which Brampton is one, means that concerts, theatrical performances and other performances can only operate if the event takes place in a drive-in or drive-through format. Otherwise, the venues are closed. We try to be as flexible as possible while at the same time ensuring that we're preventing and limiting the spread of COVID-19. But as I just indicated, as Kevin has said, we continue to monitor this situation, and public health continues to monitor it as well. I don't know, Kevin, did you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, Minister, as you said, they're simply not allowed at this point, whether it's a performance, a live stream broadcast, a recording, or a rehearsal. Not allowed at this point.
You're listening to the telephone town hall with Minister Lisa MacLeod, the Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture Industries, also joined by her Assistant Deputy Ministers, Steve Harlow and Kevin Finnerty, and a very special guest earlier, Premier Doug Ford himself joined to offer his support to the businesses operating across the province under some really difficult circumstances. Minister, we'll go back to the world of sport and a bit of a look ahead here. Tom Hutchison, from the General Manager of Boogie Mountain Ski Resort, asks, will ski hills be able to open? This is for selling seasons passes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tom. This is an issue Doug Downey has been on almost since, and Laurie Scott almost since day one, to make sure that we're prepared. So recreational activities such as ski and snow recreation are not subject to the gathering limits listed for sport and recreation activity facilities. However, due to the nature of these businesses, there may be other sections of the regulation that apply. So you just have to make sure that you review the above regulation as it relates to all aspects of your business. I'll ask Steve Harlow, who's been leading this file for me, just to talk a little bit about what sections that may or may not be applicable to you. But I think that it's safe to say that just like golf was important in the summer or the early spring months during the first lockdown, I think skiing is going to be obviously very important as we get through the winter season for all Ontarians. So Steve, did you have anything else you'd like to add?
Thank you, Minister. Some of the provisions that we may want to look at and be mindful of are the capacity limits that are open to the public. So you'll need to think about your facility, and you'll need to be restricted by the total number of people you can have in a chalet or in a common space or common area. There's also cleaning requirements that you'll need to be cognizant of, as well as any rental facilities. I think the other important thing to think about for skiing and ski hills is Minister is absolutely right. For recreational activities, ski and snowboarding, they're not subject to the gathering limit. However, if you are holding a competition with Alpine Ontario, the restrictions related to outdoor sport competitions will apply to that part of the mountain.
Thanks.
Very good. A question now, Minister, regarding the travel restriction. I think folks are trying to understand how this will impact them in different parts of the province. Kayla Galvin, the operations manager from Kitchener, Ontario, asks, do the enhanced measures include a travel restriction, and where does this apply?
Okay, thanks very much. It's sort of a yes and a no. So the first part of that is, on Friday, the Chief Medical Officer of Health, on his advice, we asked Ontarians only to travel for essential reasons, particularly outside of the hot zone. So that was in the press release on Friday. That said, in terms of sport leagues, there are no geographical restrictions on leagues and amateur sport teams, but it is recommended that leagues only play within the same geographical region, i.e., if you're my daughter and she's playing with her Nepean Wildcats, she is to be only within her league and not mix, and only play in the 2 arenas that she's in at the moment. We don't have any other travel restrictions regarding out-of-province visitors from other parts of Canada, other than the advice that we've typically given, which is not to travel and stay at home if you're ill or experiencing any symptoms. Bring essential supplies with you. Continue to follow public health advice, including physical distancing, limiting close contact to your household, frequent hand washing, using your face coverings. And before you leave wherever you're at, to go to wherever you're going, check the local restrictions for places you may be traveling through and for your destination. So in terms of sport leagues, if you are continuing to travel in your own area, stay close. And it's not heavily recommended that you go around to other areas. And then in terms of the restrictions, more broadly based in terms of people moving around the province, again, the Chief Medical Officer of Health has asked that unless it's essential, for you not to travel. So I know these are difficult questions to interpret, and I may actually have both ADMs chime in on this because Kevin is responsible for tourism, Steve is responsible for sport, and I just want to make sure that we're clear on both instances.
Yeah. Hi, Minister. It's Kevin. So on the tourism side, as you said, there are no restrictions in the legal sense on when it comes to travel. But as the Premier and yourself and other cabinet ministers have been saying, people really should be restricting non-essential travel as a key way of stopping the spread of COVID. So we're really counting upon the goodwill of Ontarians to be able to adhere to the public health advice they're getting from Cabinet, medical officers of health across the province, and the Minister in terms of doing the right thing. So, Steve, I'll turn it over to you in terms of the sports side.
I think it's the exact same, Kevin. As you've articulated and as the Minister articulated, stay safe, stay close, play your sport as close to home as you can would be the advice that we give. So that would be my contribution.
Thanks, Steve.
Minister, a follow-up to one of your previous telephone town halls, Paul Oslin, the CEO with Athletics Ontario, asks, when will details on the $3.4 million to sport be provided?
Thanks, Paul. My hope is it's done in very short order. We've signed the bilateral agreement, so it's just making sure that the mechanics are underway. And I'm also looking at other ways which we might be able to support and enhance sport funding in the province. And so hopefully that will be done in short order.
Terrific, Minister. Again, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Minister Telephone Town Hall. This is the 10th that she's done. It was refreshing to hear Premier Ford earlier on reflecting on how Minister MacLeod has gone to bat, how she is fighting for the mom and pops, to the institutions, the associations who are proud to do such great work in the heritage, sport, tourism, and culture industries and contribute so much to our provincial economy and the $75 billion impact on payroll and local spending. Minister, you got through all of my questions here. We had pre-submitted, but they're all, I think, answered by now in terms of these limits and how they apply. The Assistant Deputy Minister had said, folks, read closely through Section 13 to see how this details for you. I think, Minister, at this point, I'll pass it back to you for closing comments. And thank you again for your steadfast leadership, your determination to fight for the folks on this call and other businesses and associations out there.
Listen, thank you, Tim, for always being here for us. And thank you to the Premier, obviously, for taking the time to meet with all of us today. And my ADMs, Kevin and Steve, have been by my side this entire pandemic. I'm very grateful to them, our team, and obviously everybody that took the time. So I know the news Friday was particularly difficult for those in our sectors, especially in the hot spots across the province. But before we conclude, I wanted to share the measures the ministry has taken since we last spoke. As you know, we continue to make investments. In the last 2 weeks, we have announced $9 million in the Reconnect event and Festival Fund to move programming into a digital or drive-in and drive-through model, and close to another $7 million in film, TV, and book export development. The Finance Minister made an announcement last Friday of $300 million, which the Premier talked about, to support affected businesses in the areas which are now back into stage 2. We're working to modernize and enhance both the sport hosting program and the festival and events program for 2021. We also continue to work with the Ministry of Attorney General and Civil Liability Insurance. The ministerial advisory committees continue to meet, and all of them had the opportunity to meet with Premier Ford last Friday after the latest round of restrictions were announced. The ministerial advisory committees provided guidance and advice to me and the ministry and have helped us position our needs for the upcoming budget with recovery proposals. This is ever more important. From a high level, after engaging Ipsos, this is what we found. Ontarians are comfortable resuming certain regular activities that are among smaller groups or on their own. Although many more activities are currently allowed in stage 3, very few people are comfortable participating in them, with the vast majority saying they would only undertake activities in 6 months or more. That means only 45% of the population, or 45% of the population would only eat at a restaurant indoors in the next 6 months. Only 57% of the population would only travel by transit in the next 6 months. 62% of the population would only stay in a hotel after 6 months. 68% of Ontarians would only go to a live concert in 6 months. And 60% of Ontarians will wait 6 months to go to a museum or a gallery. Overall, Ontarians are supportive of a more gradual reopening and are willing to backtrack if necessary. The size of the groups matters and can dictate the willingness for people to participate in any particular activity. Increased participation in activities in spite of ongoing general concerns suggests rebuilding confidence comes from the bottom up rather than the top down. Suggesting for everyone on this call, communications and programming should be focused on specific programming in your organization or business, and will have a better chance of breaking through. Meaning, support your local restaurant because it has an emotional connection to you, or your favorite museum where you've taken your child and you have great memories, or your favorite gym where you know everybody that's on the treadmill and around the community. A vaccine or effective treatment for COVID-19 continues to be the most likely to motivate people to resume regular activities. Ontarians are paying close attention to the number of new COVID-19 cases in the province. With that, 8 out of 10 respondents say a decrease in the number would impact their willingness to participate in more activities. And finally, a majority of Ontarians continue to be unwilling to travel across the province. This number has remained unchanged since May, when it was at 60%. The data as provided by Ipsos is a stark reminder that we were first hit, we were hardest hit, and we will take the longest to recover, which is why on October 30th, I'll be outlining our 5-year strategic plan for the recovery, reconnection, and resurgence of our sectors. I appreciate the time and dedication everyone on this call has made to the vibrancy of our cultural fabric and social impact of the province of Ontario. And I know more than ever, this latest round of restrictions has really highlighted the fragility of our $75 billion suite of sectors. I remain committed to working with all of you as we continue to navigate these choppy waters. I want to thank you for the work that you're doing. I want to promise you I'm by your side. I know not all of these answers are the ones you want to hear, but I am fighting for you. My team is working hard for you, and we want to do what's in the best interest of all Ontarians while keeping them safe against the spread of COVID-19. I know Friday was very tough on all of the folks that live in the hot zones, including in my own city of Ottawa. It was news I don't think any of us wanted to hear or believe. Having said that, in 28 days' time, I know that together we will have prevented the spread of COVID-19, given the measures that we took under the leadership of Premier Ford and the best medical advice possible from Dr. David Williams and the Health Table. With that, I assure you the Ministry will continue to work day in and day out to answer your questions. We will continue to meet with our ministerial advisory committees, and we will ensure that they are provided with the data that I highlighted today. We will continue to work with our provincial sport organizations to best navigate what the next return to play looks like, not only in the hot zones, but also around the rest of the province. And we will continue to leverage investments within the ministry to preserve and protect our sectors now so that they're positioned to compete globally when the pandemic is over. So with that, thank you so much, Tim, and to everyone else for taking the time with us today. Again, if you have any questions that were unanswered, I think we got through a lot today. You're always welcome to email me at minister.macleod@ontario.ca. Again, minister.macleod@ontario.ca, and my team and I will endeavor to get back to you as quickly as possible. So thank you, Tim.
Well, thank you very much, Minister, and of course, Assistant Deputy Ministers Harlow and Tinderdy for their technical answers on what is a complex an unfortunate development due to COVID, although best to keep us all safe and merge to a better Ontario in the time ahead. Minister, I do want to say again, thank you so much for your compassion for the people who are on this call, the businesses they run, the talent they represent, the people they have on payroll. It is reassuring to see that you've made a huge difference for the sector in many programs to help rise up from this, and that you have the Premier of the province's ear and that of Cabinet, your drive, your determination to fight to help the right person at the right time during a tough time for our province. To all at home, thank you very much for participating in this call. We do look forward to Minister MacLeod's 5-year strategic plan to be launched on October 30th. Stay tuned for that. And we look forward to seeing you at the next town hall as well. And thank you so much for your questions, which helps get information out today to over 1,000 people and then more electronically. This will conclude today's call. Again, thank you, Minister, Assistant Deputies, and all who participated.
Thank you again to everyone for joining us. Again, if you have any questions or any feedback that you would like to share with Minister MacLeod and the Ministry, you can do so by emailing minister.macleod@ontario.ca. Just a reminder, you can email your questions and feedback to us at minister.macleod@ontario.ca.